Welcome to What's Your Edge, a series of Vision Edge marketing podcasts dedicated to helping you use data, analytics, process, and measurement to create a competitive edge for you and a superior experience for your customers. I'm your host, Laura Patterson, President of Vision Edge Marketing. In this episode of What's Your Edge, we're focusing on a foundational driver of sustainable growth, innovation. Research from McKinsey suggests that companies that prioritize innovation generate significantly higher growth than their peers. In one study, innovation leaders achieved 2.4 times higher total shareholder returns than laggards over a 10-year period, underscoring that innovation is not a nice to have, but a core driver of long-term value. As everyone listening knows, true innovation isn't a one-time event or the product of a lone genius. It's a disciplined, iterative effort woven into the culture and operations of high-performing organizations. You may have read our article, Massive Action Leads to Business Growth, Innovation, and Operational Excellence, where we explored how companies that operationalize innovation, that is, where it's everyone's responsibility, are the ones that consistently outpace their peers. This is going to be a key part of the conversation we have today. We're talking with Ed Trevis, President and CEO of Corvalent, an industrial computing manufacturing company whose leadership journey offers a compelling blueprint for transforming a legacy business through innovation. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you so much, Laura, for inviting me for this episode. You're absolutely right. The industrial innovation can drive profound transformation, profound. 32 years of business leading this company, I'll tell you, we have experienced like extreme moments where we had to break from the normal and pivot situations, whether it was for technology advancement to shifting markets where we saw plenty of it in 30 years, as you can imagine. And then the economic and the financial pressures that actually, put CEOs in certain situation. And as a CEO, we almost have to maintain that healthy, what I say, it's probably going to scare some people here, paranoia, that about the possibility of becoming obsolete one day. And that's, something that every CEO is afraid of, that happens. And I think that's a healthy concern, and it's often in these moments that the real action occurs, the breakthrough innovation occurs. And I think that's the beauty about becoming a leader in an organization and a CEO, especially in the technology world, right?
Yes, I agree with you, Ed. And I'm so glad you mentioned that innovation starts at the top.
Right.
As leaders, we set expectations. I too have been at the helm of a company for a long time. And so I know how important it is to model curiosity and foster accountability. And as you mentioned, you've been leading Corvalent here since 1993. Can you share one of those pivotal moments when you realized Corvalent needed to embrace a culture of innovation? What was the catalyst for the shift?
I'll mention to you something that I just wrote a chapter as a co-author of a book that's called The Art of Innovate. And that book, it was really interesting because it's got 24 different CEOs. It's in Portuguese, but it was actually, published in Brazil just about a month and a half ago. And where I talk about something that happened to us. I mean, there were several moments in the life of our organization where we had to be more than innovative. But there's one that I even wrote on that specific chapter that really, I mean, the chapter is actually called, in English, it's called The Dangerous Silence of How Demotivation Threatened Our Future. And that's basically the title of that specific chapter. We faced what I call a silent, devastating problem at the time, where there was a employed demotivation situation happening, and it was silent. I couldn't really realize until I woke up. So there was a widespread of feeling of stagnation. There was low engagement for employees. There was a disconnect and of their, in their real impact on their work. And it was like their task was just felt like simply tasks and without really great purpose, and that was one thing that I realized, when I woke up over time, that created a lot of, a huge cycle of dissatisfaction, low productivity, and no personal growth. I mean, we saw like very little personal growth. And it took a while to actually realize this, but worse still, when a team loses the belief of their work that, they start to really think that the belief that their work doesn't really matter, the whole team leaves, I mean, completely loses vitality. And that was
Yes.
one thing that
Ex-
we felt, isn't it? I mean, that's something that
yes.
I don't know if you ever felt that way, but the disconnection was subtle. So,
Yes,
but became,
we have
yeah,
seen
yeah,
that in other organizations, and I really like your phrase, the
right,
silent problem. You know, Ed,
yeah,
we know from our experience that no transformation comes without challenges,
right,
and what you're talking about is changing culture,
right.
especially in a really long established company like yours, and that requires trust and communication and clear incentives. So, how did you secure buy-in across all the different teams and functions?
So when we identified the problem, we realized something very fundamental. It wasn't enough to just innovate in products and services like we always do. We need to innovate in how we manage our people and our culture. It was something that we felt that was really very big for us. So innovation became part of the strategic pillar of our corporate objectives, a living practice. It's throughout the entire company, across, I mean, every single department we had to actually implement such a thing. So one of the things that we did, we thought about changing mindsets, because basically when you have all these people with mindsets, the same way I explained here, we said we have to use a tool, we have to use some kind of a innovation to actually do that. So there was some very focus on critical thinking, there was focus on engagement, there was focus on energy. We provide like incentive programs and awards and etc. So that was like one part of innovation that we did. As a result, we gave everyone a voice in many
Yeah,
ways. And when you
exactly.
give employees a voice, they feel like they're a part of it, encourage a lot of participation,
Yes.
promoted exchanges of ideas, made innovation like, part of everyone's life at Corvalent, right? As
Yeah,
well
I
as
think that,
personally. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
amazing that you were able to make innovation a part of everyone's life at Corvalent.
Right.
I mean, that's
Yeah, we
quite
had
a,
wives and partners actually call us and said, "What did you do to my husband or wife?" Things are much better at home as well. So it's
good. You know, we really have found that innovation flourishes when it is systematic and measurable, like what you're talking
that's
about,
right. Yeah.
and encouraging innovation to be a part of, to be a every part of every aspect of the organization, whether that's HR or finance or
Mhm.
product, and then setting a target to innovate. I know one of the things we have talked about is innovating, setting a target to innovate every year. So how did you structure the expectation that every team would contribute in some way annually to innovation? And what systems or processes have you put in place to support this?
You know, it's interesting that you asked me that question because for about 5, 6 years now, after we realized what we did, is one of the main objectives of our yearly strategic planning is innovation. I think every company should have that. You can have like, targets to revenue and EBITDA and
Yes.
all this stuff, or how many new customers and this and that, like some major things. So what we did, we institute that part of innovation for every department, for every manager, and all the way down to to the last person in the company to so every department of the organization develops what we call rocks. Rocks are basically based on
Yes.
corporate objectives. So it's kind of like, we use that for goals. These rocks were smart goals. They were taught and established before, the end of the prior year. So right before we finished the year, we had meetings and talk about strategic planning and all that. So every team member, either individually or groups, were assigned within every single department, to help accomplish these goals. So
Yeah.
they're all part of it. So for every single objective, there were goals that were assigned, and innovation was major objective. Innovation is always a main corporate objective. And a lot of people think that innovation is about products and services. It's not. Not only that, it's
Yes.
actually a low bunch of stuff operationally. There's a lot of innovation that happens internally. The use of AI on certain things, the different procedures and processes you put in place. You try to innovate. I mean, you wake up, you innovate.
Yeah, we
So
totally We totally agree, because that's what we talk about when we work with, our customers, Ed, is how to do that. And that we don't call them rocks, we call them outcomes. Those are the
Yeah,
outcomes that you want the organization to achieve, and that everyone needs to be rowing in the same direction, working together in order
yeah,
to make that happen. So, and sometimes the best ideas, they come from unexpected places.
yeah.
Can you share an example of an innovation, that surprised you, perhaps one that emerged from a department that traditionally isn't associated with product development?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask because, there was one that just happened not too long ago, probably about 2 years ago. And that was, I thought that was pretty, some innovation that I thought that was pretty interesting. What happened is we're in a hardware and software business. The hardware has some vertical segments, and the software has some other vertical segments. They kind of like interface with each other in certain areas, in certain segments. But being a designer in local manufacturing, industrial computing solutions, we operate a well-structured organization. So with multiple departments, including sales, engineering, production, marketing, everything. So at that time, our marketing group developed a new website architecture. I thought it was very innovative and design that clearly separates the two distinct product lines. So there's the hardware and the software. They kind of interface with each other a little bit, but they're different verticals. So it was really hard to explain to customers, we're not getting out of the hardware business. We're now also in the software business. And by the way, we're not only software business, but we also hardware business. So each serving different industries and segments. But the result was intuitive and easy to navigate through our website. And it became a little bit more clear for a customer that, the hardware is still there. Customers that had rely on us for 32 years, they were still there and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. And we continue to actually pursue a lot of business into that. But it was really, really good and high functional online experience. I mean, that
That's
was
a
effective, communicate the full scope of Corvalent capabilities overall, right?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is that innovation has to solve real problems. And
Right.
you're talking about creating a new platform um,
Hmm.
that you all develop, which provides sort of preventive and predictive maintenance data
That's
that
right.
was developed, in response to customer needs for
Right.
reducing downtime and costs. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit, very briefly, about the name
Hmm.
of your platform, since well, I don't want to leave our conversation about innovation, but the name of your platform and what customer insights or market signals led you to develop it, and how did you validate the need for this particular solution?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. Core Grid Suite. It's called Core Grid Suite. And Core Grid Suite is a combination of hardware and software on. It's an IoT platform.
Hmm.
Basically integrate software and hardware components, provide like a complete solution, of data collection, monitoring, intelligent control across all industrial applications. So we got that entire thing. So the key industry segments we focus on today is industrial automation process. We do smart machines. We do smart energy. We do utilities, oil and gas, petrochemical, smart building and infrastructure, and smart cities, which is it's like a brush fire all over the world.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to become a smart city, and they need to because they need to control a whole bunch of stuff. So in the last decade, we observe our capital equipment. This is how we actually really identify this too. The last decade, we observed that a lot of capital equipment customers were closely following the global adoption of the Industry 4.0 among very large manufacturers. Was like a big deal for a lot of contract manufacturers and all that stuff. So we saw
Hmm.
that major revolution, as per se. So throughout this continuous conversation that we had with customers, we realized that the competitive environment, we identify like a key objective, shared across all the industries, the need to implement preventive and predictive maintenance for these machines, along with some level of operational control of their equipment. So building on that insight, throughout this whole thing, we designed a solution framework not only to meet those needs, but also to empower, customers to manage and resolve field issues that they had, problems in manufacturing and things like that, or problems with the machines out there, more effectively. So although it was a unified single pane of glass platform that integrates monitoring, tracking, and control, it's the best solution for these customers to take care of all these products on the field
Uh-huh.
globally, not
Yeah, that's
just
good.
locally or just one machine, but globally. They could see all their machines all over the world, see what the preventive and predictive maintenance that they can actually work.
Yeah.
And now with all these tools, they can do agentic AI. They can do
Uh-huh.
artificial intelligence control of a lot of this stuff and minimize a lot of the issues that we have problems with out in the field, right? Yeah.
That's amazing what you have been able to
Yeah.
accomplish with this new platform.
Yeah.
But here's what we know from our work and also from Ensure Strong Innovation Adoption, which is an article we wrote about not very long ago. Even the very
Hmm.
best solutions can face adoption barriers.
That's
So
right.
even if you have a really clear value proposition like yours, like a single pane of glass, in order to do, preventive and predictive maintenance, um, I know that it can be challenging, those initial adoption rates. And you had mentioned to me that they were lower than anticipated. So what did you learn, briefly, what did you learn from this experience? And how did it influence your approach going forward?
Well, let me talk about segments of the industry, right? Focus. What happened is what we learned when we first came up with this platform, which is a PaaS platform, to develop applications for all these different, verticals and all these different needs. We realized that just a platform didn't it was not going to work perfectly. We got into a lot of industries, a lot of people, so we all realized that we need to be a segment focused kind of company. We need to narrow down the specific verticals and applications that we had to work with. And that was when, the acquisition of proof of concepts was also the next step. We wanted to get proof of concepts in different industries or different verticals and all this stuff. So just in the focus that we're really, different applications that we had to be really focused. So the creation of that full turnkey solutions also came to light because we realized that from customer assessments, software, hardware installation was a must. It wasn't just the software, it wasn't just the software and hardware, was actually the installation as well. So a large majority of the prospects were not prepared to implement the entire automation on their own because it takes a company that is not in our business to find a software like us, a hardware, sensory, and all this stuff, and then find somebody to install it, which basically they're probably building a medical machine that had nothing to do with this. So they had to get a company like us to actually do the full turnkey solution, which made it a lot easier for customers to implement IoT, which is like revolutionizing the industry overall.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what we have found in our work,
yeah.
and even in the work that we do for ourselves, that
Hmm.
successful innovators are relentless iterators. So,
Right.
you've iterated over time. When adoption lagged, it sounds like you didn't just push harder on existing customers. You looked outward, you identified these new verticals like the smart buildings, like smart energy and smart cities, and you leveraged beta sites to build credibility. So I'm just
Right.
curious, how did you and your team identify and prioritize these new verticals? And what role have beta sites played in gaining traction and validating use cases?
Okay, so here's the thing that we did. We conducted like about 2 years, I would say, of consultative marketing research and pre-sales exercise prior to
Yes.
having specific applications designed, under our PaaS platform. So this enables us to understand the pains of each segment. Those are really, really important. A lot of the challenges and pain that each of one of those verticals had, a lot of the customers have different pain, pains that really, impacted it in the way we actually designed the product. The market potential for each one of those, the tasks, all the stuff that actually comes with it, the total market as a service as per se, the customer ROI, does that make sense to implement something like that? Is the customer gonna get a great ROI out of this? In a competitive landscape, I mean, who is in the business doing this? Who are we going to actually compete with? And that
Yeah.
was the biggest thing that we actually had to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a company with roots in market research, I mean, that's the roots of Vision Edge marketing and competitive intelligence. I commend you on all that pre-work that you did because it makes a huge difference.
Huge
Ed,
difference.
um, iteration is kind of a recurring theme in your leadership. we've had the opportunity to interact over the years, and I'm curious, how do you foster a culture where experimentation and learning from setbacks are valued?
I think like many other companies, learn by doing is part of our culture, as in many ways to say, Laura. The positive state of mind of going through the experience, whether is a success or a failure, strategic thinking and planning, post-mortem, meetings that we had, lessons learned, and through positive reinforcement of leadership style, it's extremely good. So I do have a mantra that goes from knowledge to experience, either be good or bad, and equals wisdom as an organization. So
Yeah,
that kind of like, how we actually work with that part of our, of our learning process, and, and how we foster that culture. I mean, we don't blame anybody for making mistakes as per se. We encounter this as more of an experience and in a way of learning, right? I think
yes,
that's the thing you need to make
exactly.
sure. Nobody should be afraid to make mistakes. They should take the risk of doing certain things, and sometimes they have to be calculated risk because could involve a lot of financials and stuff. But one of the things that I do, I
Yeah,
foster that risk,
that's a great
among our people.
that's a
Right.
great equation. Knowledge
Yeah.
plus experience equals wisdom.
Yeah.
That's an excellent, equation. One of the things we've already kind of been talking about earlier when you were talking about your rocks is that
Hmm.
we advise our customers to measure not just outputs, but outcomes.
Right.
So using really clear metrics and feedback loops is crucial.
Right.
And what metrics or key performance indicators? And we don't need I don't want you to give away anything that you're not comfortable with, but I think our listeners who are other CEOs and leaders of companies would like to know what kind of metrics, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Bless you.
everybody. Thank you. What metrics or key performance indicators do you use to measure the success of innovation initiatives at Corvalent?
Well, over the years, we have developed like dashboards, which many companies do, that encompass not only results, that you want to see on a monthly basis and a yearly basis, quarterly basis, and so forth, but also metrics for intercompany communication and process on activities like in engineering, marketing, sales, things that are very like operational development, focus on constant team feedback. And I can talk more about that constant team feedback. Sometimes it's, this is all to make sure nothing is missed or forgotten, but feedback is a very important thing in an
Oh,
organization. So it's like dividing and planning, delegating, ongoing constant feedback behavior throughout the organization to follow rather than just follow up management as a culture. In other words, so you tell an employee what to do, and instead of you having to go there and talk to them how we're doing on this project, they come and feedback you once in a
yes,
while. They give you feedback on things that they're encountering, their challenges, where they at, when they think they're going to be done. So that culture of feedback actually made us as an organization a lot more effective. Some of the key performance indicators, obviously, and metrics we use in our company are customers' employee surveys.
sure.
Why is that important? The feedback helps us understand their input about innovation in many, many ways, because that's
Yes.
what we do, innovation all the time. Helps us define and measure employee and customer retention.
I think
So,
that's great. I mean, it's really
yeah,
to your point, feedback,
yeah,
customer feedback, supplier feedback,
that's
employee
right.
feedback are all extremely important. I'm so glad you
Yeah,
guys invest in
yeah.
collecting that and learning from that. And I
Mhm.
know that as a CEO that's been around for a while, you have a really unique perspective on leadership and innovation. So, has your leadership philosophy changed? And as you've become more innovation driven, and if so, how has it changed? And what are some of your personal practices and beliefs? Uh-huh.
And we leverage the beta side deals to help drive adoption. So in other words, we come to customers and say, look, that industry we're not working with, would you like to be a beta site for us on this specific solution? And they agree to do that. And then, we basically install there, make things that work. And we've suddenly created a specific application for that industry. And that works extremely well.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a great way to be very customer centric. So
Yeah.
let's go wind the world, look ahead. Let's look ahead, and because change, the pace of change is only going to accelerate. So I want you to kind of think ahead about the priorities for Corvalent's next phase of innovation, and any new frontiers or technologies that you're going to be excited about. So I know you've been talking all about this America's free trade landscape. Can you kind of take us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm truly energized about this emerging frontier of all America free trade landscape. I mean, dream with me for a little bit. It's a powerful vision where more than 1 billion people across over 50 countries in all Americas and territories that come together in an unprecedented collaboration. Think about that for a minute. With a mere 2 to 5 hour time zone difference span, not 12, 15 hours like we have with different countries all over the world, that we had done this before, right? And united by a shared linguistic and cultural roots. Think about that for a minute. We're all kind of speak languages of the same alphabet. The entire hemisphere is poised to ignite what could be the greatest economic boom for the next 50 years. Just that simple.
Yeah.
Together we can share the greatest technology, from there, from all Americas to here, from here to them, elevate innovations to new heights, and build a future divine, totally defined by peace, partnership, and a widespread prosperity for all countries, including the United States. So this is more than just a free trade. For me, it's like a historic opportunity to uplift some of the nations we see, like, for example, in Latin America,
Yeah.
empower people and unlock the full potential to all Americas. Estimating an economy that, is calculating $50 trillion in less than 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
you can
That
do any
is,
kind of research. It's just absolutely possible when you
that
have more than 1 billion people, you know?
Yeah, that is quite
Yeah,
a vision. That is a
yeah,
very exciting uh, I dream. That is a great dream.
yeah, that's a
So I
great
want to
dream.
thank you, Ed, for illustrating
Thank
what
you.
it means to build and sustain a culture of innovation. I think you have a really powerful message about rather than treating the silent problem as a human resource issue, you and your team recognize it as a strategic threat. And you used it as a catalyst to innovate your products and how you manage your people and performance. Um, I you elevated innovation to a strategic pillar and you've embedded it into your corporate objectives. And you've shown us how innovation can was made a living practice. Before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share or any lessons learned that you'd like to share with our community?
Well, I can't actually talk here about an hour about lessons learned. Obviously, in 32 years, you learn so much. But one of the things that I always say, it's lonely at the top. And one of the things that I always say, try to find a group that you can share your challenges, that you can share your successes, and a coach, a group of people. Like, I'm part of Vistage International, which is a really great organization. Yeah, I love talking to people. I really do.
Yes, I know you do. And I love talking with you. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights with us today. And for our listeners, remember that building a culture of innovation is within reach for every organization, provided you commit to the process, measure what matters, and to Ed's point, never stop learning. If you're ready to move beyond one-off initiatives and build a true culture of innovation, start by asking the same question Ed did. Where is the dangerous silence in your organization?
Yeah.
And how are you equipping every team, not just product, to innovate? And to explore how to operationalize innovation, improve adoption, and use data and process to accelerate growth, come visit us at visionedgemarketing.com and check out our resources on innovation, iteration, and performance management. Let's talk if you'd like to help assessing your current innovation readiness or building a roadmap for your next phase of growth. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of our community. And thank you, Ed, for being with us today. We hope you found this episode of What's Your Edge helpful. And since 1999, Vision Edge Marketing has been helping our customers solve the most difficult challenges when it comes to using data, analytics, process, and measurement to accelerate growth, create customer value, and improve performance. We always welcome hearing from you.